Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers, and the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I think
there's Bears out of the way. Let's just get the Bears.
There's 3 teams in here that can compete for the playoff spot. The Bears, we'll start off with the Bears. They have some promise due to the fact that in the first week of the preseason, the man Mitchell Trubisky looked really, really good. And I think a lot of people are kind of retracting their statements on this draft situation, even though they probably could have picked him already at the spot they were at. But regardless, they solidified their quarterback. He looked really good. And I know it's just preseason, but he looks promising. Now, the rest of the Bears team, they have a few promising situations. I mean, their running back situation with Jordan Howard, very, very young, also was second in the league in rushing last year. Cameron Meredith looks to be maybe a number 1 receiver in this league. He had close to 1,000 yards last year. Another very young guy that kind of broke out of nowhere. So they have some young guys, but they're not going to be a competing team this year. Their offensive line, Their defense is very concerning in the secondary, and really not a lot going for this team. But what I want to see from this team is if Mitchell Trubisky ends up playing, which it looks like if he plays as good as he did in the first week, the next couple of weeks, he might end up being the number 1 quarterback. I just want to see how he progresses and how this young talent on this team progresses, and that's about it. But overall, I have this team finishing at 3-13. I don't think they're going to be very good. I think they'll be one of the top 5 worst teams in the league. And I think they might even be the worst team in the entire conference. What do you guys think about the Chicago Bears this year?
I have one team that's tied with them in the NFC for the second worst record, and then a team that has an even worse record. So I will not put them. I will put them at tied for second worst.
Wow. I have one team tied with them, but I don't have any teams the same.
They're going to go 3-13, in my opinion. I think we've seen one preseason game. Okay, he can have the potential. I'm not going to discredit him, but I am not a big believer in Mitchell Trubisky. I'm putting that out there. He could prove me wrong, just like many quarterbacks have done in the past. But
why are you not a big believer?
I'm just not a big. I'm not a big fan. I think there are some huge inaccuracies that I think he needs to work on huge this season, and he can definitely.
What are those inaccuracies?
I don't think he's. You're trying to call me out on this thing.
No, I'm just saying you have to state what the inaccuracies.
No, I just don't. I don't think he has some talent with the receiver position, but with the minus of Alshon Jeffrey, I don't think he's going to be that completely accurate. I don't think he's the most accurate quarterback on the planet. I don't think he's the standards of the NFC North with the guys of not necessarily Sam Bradford, but you got Matthew Stafford, you got Aaron Rodgers, you got a lot to live for, and I don't think he's going to be that big of a deep threat. I don't think he's going to be able to avoid the pressure that gets onto him, especially with some of the teams.
He's playing on one of the worst teams in the league.
I'm not saying his offensive line's going to help him at all, but I'm just saying I don't think he's going to make that many big plays even later on in his career. That's just how I see it right now.
Okay. So you're saying he won't be good as a quarterback in the NFL, not just this season.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's just going to be just this season. Then again, you can prove me wrong.
Yeah, and he's not going to start till week 5, 6, or 7.
I think he might start week 1.
I don't think so. You don't pay Mike Glennon that type of money not to have him start week 1.
If Mike Glennon throws a pick 6 in the next 2 games like he did last game, he might end up. Because I've heard that there's so much hype about Trubisky from the fan base that they might force him to start.
I just don't see it.
That's what John Fox said. He said he has the most hype since Tim Tebow.
So John Fox as a coach is listening to the fans now? That's not a good sign.
Well, he did with Tim Tebow.
Huh?
He did with Tim Tebow.
But he didn't start that season week 1.
No, but he said that the only other quarterback that's had as much hype as Trubisky from a fan base was Tim Tebow.
Yeah. Tebow playing baseball. But yeah, in this situation, I just don't see it. He could definitely prove me wrong, like I've said multiple times. I think they'll still, even with that being said, I think they'll be 3-13. They have to play a bunch of difficult teams this year. Some teams that they can win some easy games. They could even be as good as 5-11, considering there are some teams like the Jaguars and some other low-ranking teams. But I think 3-13 is where I'm going to settle at right now. I have them tied for the second worst record in the NFC.
Yeah, I got them at 2-14 because their schedule is tough. I think they lose, obviously, both games against Packers. They lose both games against the Lions. If anything, maybe they can sneak out one against the Vikings. But even if they don't do that, I still have a feeling that, they might be able to get a win against the Browns or the 49ers, but they have a pretty tough schedule, in my opinion, for being a team with a rookie quarterback. Like, you start Falcons, an upcoming Bucks, Steelers, Packers, your first 4 games, then Vikings, right? So, if you
no
lose,
one's saying they're going to be a good team.
and I'm not either. I'm just saying. I'm saying 2-14. I don't mind Trubisky, but it was one preseason game against 3rd and 4th teamers. I was listening to Pardon the Interruption, and Wilbon joked around. He's like, he's going against, and he's a Bears fan, he's going against guys that are going to be in the CFL.
They were actually playing second stringers in the second. He was playing in the second quarter.
No, I know, but even your starters barely even play. Plus, then the Eagles were playing 3rd and 4th stringers in the second quarter as well. You'd have to
look. I think it's debatable. I think he looked the best of any rookie quarterback this week.
Yeah, no, and I won't doubt that, but I'm just saying that he did look good, but I don't think preseason means anything. We've seen some.
No, I know that. I'm just saying.
Rookie quarterback. Well, I know, but
and I said that.
The only NFL game we saw him play, and I don't think we can judge it just off this one game, regardless.
Okay.
Once.
I'm not very hyped on it. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, I think he could be good eventually, but like I said, I don't think he plays till they're 1-5, 1-6, 1-7 type thing. Because I think you don't pay Mike Glennon that much money, guaranteed money too, to sit on the bench or at least not start week 1. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on Trubisky. Unless you think you have a chance to make the playoffs or something with a rookie quarterback, what's the point of him taking his lumps all season long and finishing 3-13?
Then what's the point of putting him in the Jared Goff situation where he's in the middle of the season and has no chance?
Well, I think both are wrong. I'd rather see them sit like the Aaron Rodgers. I'd rather see that because I think that is a more proven method. Or being a quarterback like Watson's going to be on a good team. You know what I mean? I don't think going in, what quarterback have we seen be successful on a really bad team?
Matt Ryan.
Yeah, but what that for next season? It's not like he did that much, right? And I guess it did help.
They made the playoffs.
Ben.
But Ben didn't start, right? He took over for Maddox.
Week 2.
Week 2 is rookie season. He took over.
Russell.
Yeah. Russell. Yeah.
Russell. What was that? He took over week 1.
I don't know if Joe Flacco's team was bad. They weren't good.
Okay. I'm just saying that I don't think they should start him. And you pay Glennon all that money.
Andrew Luck.
You got to play him.
That's one.
Peyton Manning.
No, Peyton Manning's team was awful the first year.
Yeah. Well,
Andrew Luck. Yes, Andrew Luck.
They went 2-13 the first year with that.
All right, so we all agree. Kev, you agree that the Bears stink?
The Bears, yeah, and if you're paying $16 million a year to Mike Glennon, you stink. Okay, so let's just put that out there. I'm not gonna say I like or dislike Trubisky. To me, it would be the same. The Seahawks scored 48 points in week 1 of a preseason game. If I came out here and announced that the Seahawks were going to win the Super Bowl, all 3 of you would throw eggs at me and laugh at me, right? So, I mean,
you're right. You're right. I don't think we'll get much farther in the first round, but we'll talk.
But so I mean, I think we need to wait and see. Yeah, so I see a 3-13, I think, for Chicago.
Good.
Okay. Next up, we have the Detroit Lions. Lions, a.k.a. Matt Stafford, made the playoffs last year. Matt Stafford was an MVP candidate to the end of the year, and he actually hurt it was one of his fingers.
I think it was
his hand. Because he was messed up at the end of the year, and that definitely impacted this team. They had a poor end to the season, a lot of that on Stafford's hand or fingers, and they finished the season terribly. I think they lost the last 4 games or something like that. And they still made the playoffs. They ended up losing to the Seahawks in a not very entertaining wild card game. But the Lions this year,
what are you talking about?
The Lions this year, I think they made some upgrades. They added a little bit to their secondary. They added DJ Hayden. from the Raiders to play slot corner, which they desperately needed to do. Their offensive line is what everyone's really been talking about. Rick Wagner from the Baltimore Ravens was a huge addition, as well as a nice signing from the Green Bay Packers in the interior. And then on the outside, I think the offense is still not surrounding enough talent for Matt Stafford. They have Golden Tate, who's like a good possession, move the chains kind of like receiver in the same breath as like maybe a worse version of like Edelman or Jarvis Landry, guy that's caught 90 receptions 2 years in a row, but he's not really a true number one receiver. They have Marvin Jones, who was on and off last year. They do have a rookie receiver who's looking really good, Galladay, who had 2 touchdowns in preseason. He's been looking really, really good throughout the entire OTAs and on training camp. So maybe he can start and take place of Anquan Bolden, who was there and scored a lot of touchdowns for them. Eric Ebron hopefully can take a step up. But where this team could improve the most and help Matt Stafford out is in the run game. Amir Abdullah is back. He's healthy. I look at him as maybe the breakout player for this team. Theo Riddick, one of the best pass-catching running backs in the league. It's going to be an interesting team. I think some of the things that really will impact it, does Stafford have enough weapons? And then the second thing on defense, can they get a pass rush? That's going to be interesting. They had one of the worst pass rushes in the entire league last year. Ezekiel Ansah, I think, only had like 3 sacks, and he's like their number one pass rusher. I look at the Lions, and I saw a team last year that it was comeback after comeback after comeback after comeback. And it was so, like, I love the Lions, but I just don't see them making the playoffs again this year because I see them as a team that put too much weight on their quarterback and too much weight on the end of games to having to come back. And I just don't quite see them. Their division, I think, is a little bit tougher this year with the Vikings. And I just don't see it. I think they're going to finish 8-8. So one loss worse than, I think one or two loss worse than last year. But I just think like a little bit tougher schedule. And I don't think the comebacks will quite be there this year. So I think just by that nature, I think the Lions are on the right track of making a team that's going to be very good in the future because I like what they're doing in the front office. But as for this year, I just think they're going to take a little bit of a step back because I thought last year was a little bit fluky. What do you guys think?
In this scenario, I do like the Lions. I've been a big supporter. I've watched Matthew Stafford for years. He actually threw a lot of balls in Highland Park, which is 40 minutes away from here. So I've been a big fan of him for a very long time. However, this Lions team has always shown me one thing, and it's that they really don't give him that much support. There's always a couple of decent players and good talent, but I haven't been able to see this Lions team fully put it together yet. I think they have the potential to do it. And, of course, like Mitch said, maybe later on down the line. But right now I have them at 9-7. I have them just missing the playoffs. There's 3 teams I had 9-7. Philadelphia is 1. Lions are 1. And then we'll have another one in the NFC South that are just barely going to miss the playoffs. But I feel like in this scenario, I don't think they're going to have enough weapons with the schedule that they have to win this division by any means. I think they'll be in second place, but I don't think that they will be the team moving forward, like as the strong competitor to get a wild card spot and make it further down the line. So 9-7 for me.
Yeah, it's tough to put these guys with a below 500 record. So I'm going same as Mitch, 8-8. I do agree with you with those comebacks. It's pretty tough to do that even last season and only finish 9-7. So if you take that into consideration, I don't think necessarily I feel like they have basically the same team. They lost a couple pieces, but Abdullah is back. They had tons of problems with, like, obviously Zach Zenner played a lot last season. So I just don't think in that division, I don't think that division is going to be as good as everyone thinks. I think that Detroit just loses one more game than they did last year. And I think, like, when we get to Minnesota, I think Minnesota is just going to kind of flip positions with Detroit and maybe win one more game. But I think, only one team's making the playoffs in this division for me, and Detroit is not that team. Their defense has always been so-so. Like you were saying with what Dylan was saying with their team, they always have some good pieces, but they never really can come together on that defensive side. And obviously, corner's always been an issue besides Darius Slay. DJ Hayden, yeah, they bring him over, but DJ Hayden has had injury issues since he was drafted by Oakland. And the other corner, like Nevin Lawson, I couldn't even tell you who that guy is. I'll go 8-8 and not making the playoffs.
Wow, I have him lower than all of you. I have him at 6-10. I just think
with Stafford they can't be 6-10. That's just my opinion, but
yeah, that was exactly. I was thinking that too, and then I was like, I can't even think to put these guys lower than 500.
I just think I think the loss of Bolden is going to be a big loss for them. I don't think their receivers are very strong. I don't think that running game is really strong. I think the defense is weak. They remind me a little bit of last year's New Orleans Saints, where they're going to rely on a lot of Matthew Stafford to get them wins, but they just don't have the talent around them. And it's they improved their offensive line, which is fine, but they didn't really do enough in enough other areas for me to think higher of them. And I think that they relied a lot. You guys were mentioning this. They relied a lot on coming backs and last minutes and things like that. I just don't see them having the same kind of luck this year. And yeah, so I have them at 6-10. And not making the playoffs.
All right, interesting.
Yeah, so we all have the Lions. That's interesting. So we have two guys at 8-8, one guy at, what'd you say, Dylan, 10-6?
9-7.
9-7. And wild card or no?
No wild card.
Okay, so we don't have anyone having the Lions in the playoffs this year, which is interesting. So that's one team that made the playoffs last year that's not going to make it this year. The next team we're going to discuss is the Green Bay Packers. Packers, I think, is the favorite for everyone across the board here and for the entire world, mostly. And that's mostly due because they have a guy called Aaron Rodgers, and he's pretty good. He's
I don't know if anybody knows that, but
he's okay. But, so they do have Aaron Rodgers, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. And that's basically enough. I can go 10-6 playoffs. That's basically what I can do. But I'm actually going to have them at 11-5. I was going to put them at 12-4, but the defense is just like, I can't. Like, they're going to lose games where they shouldn't lose games, because their secondary is crap. They're losing guys on their practice field. They lost what's his name? Micah Hyde, one of my favorite players on the Packers in the past couple of years. They lost Julius Peppers, who's been, their most consistent pass rusher. Sorry, Clay Matthews, over the past couple of years. Their defense is not good. Their best defensive player is Mike Daniels. Who is solid. I think they have a good run defense, but their pass defense as a whole, pass rush secondary, is really bad. Offensively, they lost a couple of all-pro Pro Bowl linemen. They're gone. That's going to hurt them. Aaron Rodgers will mask that, and they'll get over it. They might have some struggles early on, but they'll get over it. So I'm not too worried about it, but it is something to be aware of. But they added Martellus Bennett, which will help in both the pass and the run game, because he's a very good blocker. I think Ty Montgomery as a running back, maybe they'll add Ryan Matthews. That was my suggestion, to add some depth there. But their running game should be a little bit better just by virtue of having Ty Montgomery another year in the system, actually learning running back in playing running back. They added a guy in the draft behind him, Jamal Williams. And receiver position is one of the best in the league. Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb, very, very good. They're going to win a lot of shootouts. And I think they're going to make the playoffs somewhere second, third, maybe even the first seed in the playoffs, probably 11-5, 12-4, and they're going to win this division. What do you guys think about the Green Bay Packers this year?
I really hate to give them this record because I don't think they really deserve it. I think it's all based upon how good Aaron Rodgers is. But I'm giving him an 11-5 record because Aaron Rodgers is still a tremendous quarterback. I don't know if anybody knows that. And they do have a really good receiving core. Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson, I really do like those two. But I freaking hate the defense of the Green Bay Packers. Micah Hyde was really, really good. He was one of the solid players on that team for years, and they let him go. There's a bunch of talent that should be on that team, and they're not. And their defense is all like the last couple of years has just been very subpar. Clay Matthews has done nothing of note in the last year or so. I'm giving him 11-5 almost solely because of the quarterback and the receiver line, because they don't. Montgomery is a decent running back, but he's not really a running back, if there's anything to be said about that. So 11-5, I really wish I didn't have to, but considering it's also the same situation as in the NFC West, but there's not a lot of competition to be played in terms of who's the better teams. So I have to give them an 11-5 record. They will tie with a certain team for the second best record in the NFC.
I will also say this, which I think Adam's going to get to. They have one of the easier schedules of the top teams.
Yeah. And so, you know what, I'm going to go to a limb looking back at that schedule, just the start. I do think this defense, and this whole prediction is, I do think that this defense plays better than they did last year. Plus adding of Bennett, a healthy receiving core as right now. Obviously, that always changes with the Packers. I'm going to go out on a limb and say 13-3. I feel their first two games, obviously, if they go 2-0 against the Seahawks Falcons, it's an easy 13-3 because that means their defense is going to be playing at a different level. Yeah. Even if they go 1-1, I feel if they go 0-2,
is that game in Seattle?
Nope.
It's in Green Bay.
In Green Bay,
and then they travel to Atlanta in the new stadium.
Here's the thing, though. It's always about that RELAX. He's got to do it in the middle of the season.
Yeah, usually they stink at the beginning of the year.
They're always trash. But then again, look.
And then Aaron Rodgers is like, oh, wait, I'm just going to pass the ball 70 times a game and we're going to win.
They play the Bengals. They play the Bears. They play a couple of the Bears again, Ravens. There's a lot of teams I could sit here and say they're not very good against the Packers.
Yeah, and especially Rodgers eats bad teams alive. But even the Seahawks game, it's going to be those first two games of the season are going to be awesome to watch. Both matchups. They're going to be obviously the first one's a primetime Fox, and then it's a Sunday night game against the Falcons week 2. I'll go 13-3 because I do think that defense plays a lot better. You're not going to have Ladarius Gunter playing corner, starting even getting any playing time anymore because obviously they got Devin House from Jacksonville, who's decent. Demarius Randall, who wasn't very healthy last year, is still young, right? He's only got drafted in 2015. I think Micah Hyde does hurt them, but I think Clinton Dix is getting better. Morgan Burnett is just more of a solid, strong safety. He can play up in the box.
He's kind of like an in-the-box guy.
Yeah, exactly. And then getting Kevin King too.
I heard one of their corners went down. Was it Randall or was it someone else?
Let's see right now. Right now, I can't see. Well, there's like recently.
Yeah, like this past week or something.
No, I'm not positive on that. That could, if it is Randall, I think that hurts them more than it would.
I'll have to look it up.
And then one thing about their offense, I think Montgomery's gonna be good, but look out for Jamal Williams. He was the BYU's running back. They drafted him in They drafted him in the 4th round. He was kind of up there in a top 8 running back in that draft class. And we've seen with Green Bay, they kind of just put whoever in there. And sometimes it's worked, we've seen the Stark, just a guy just plug and play. And I just don't think that division, and we'll get into Minnesota because I think Minnesota is one of the few teams that I think are overrated in my opinion. Maybe it's because of sleeves.
I actually am with Adam. I think that they're 13-3 because of their schedule, not because of the necessarily because of the talent. I actually think that they're the number 1 seed right now in the NFC. Does that mean that they're going to the Super Bowl? We'll have that discussion a little bit later, but they have a tough start. They have the Seahawks and the Falcons, but they have the Seahawks in Green Bay at home, which they obliterated last year. But they got obliterated in Atlanta, so I think a split is a reasonable expectation, but they've got a lot of easy games. Their next, the big tough one, what is it? They're going to cruise into Dallas. So
they're going to put up like 80. No, I'm just kidding.
They've got an easy schedule. They've got an easy, probably 6 wins even in their division. So, I mean, I think that a lot of people are going to be, look out for we're going to be talking about how good the Packers are throughout the year. But I think that there's a lot of warning bells when it comes to the playoffs. So 13-3, number 1 seed. But sometimes it's not always the substance.
Yeah. And let's be honest, if Packers go 13-3, Aaron Rodgers is going to be up there for MVP this season.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
He is every year.
Yeah.
So we all think the Packers are good. Next, we have the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings are an enigma. They started off the season, 5-0 last year?
Yeah.
And they had the best defense in the league, and it was like ripping offenses apart to shreds. And then all of a sudden, injury, offensive line non-existent.
Do they have an offensive
No
line?
running back that they had last year. Their receivers were falling apart. Stephon Diggs couldn't stay on the field. Their defense couldn't stay on, they couldn't get it all together. And Sammy Biscuits was just there to throw 1 yard, 2 yard passes. And that was basically their offense all year last year.
Alex Smith need to get a room together. Those guys are just the best.
This season is going to be interesting because I see the Vikings as a team that could make the playoffs. Do I have them going to the playoffs? I have them on the borderline. I have them at 9-7. I think they could make it at 10-6, and they get one more win. But I think they're just on the outside because of Sam Bradford. Now, I don't hate Sam Bradford, but I don't think he's a quarterback that I trust. This defense, I think, is going to be good. I think it's going to rebound. It's going to look more closer to the beginning of the year last year than it did at the end of the year. The offense, I think Dalvin Cook is actually my pick to win Rookie of the Year for offense. I think he's going to be awesome. And I've seen all signs he's going to be one of the most used running backs in the league. And I think their offensive line slightly improved in the offseason with health. Stephon Diggs could have a breakout year this year, stays healthy on the field. I think a lot of positive signs for the Vikings. It's just they're not a sexy pick, but they're also not, for me, a safe pick for me to really put on the line and say they're going to make the playoffs. So I have them at 9-7, but I see the promise, but I also see the downside of Sam Bradford falling apart, the offensive line falling apart. They can't block for the run game. Their defense, maybe a couple players go down, and that's the end of their season. So it's an up and down season for the Vikings. I'm not quite sure.
Going 8-8. I think this team has some potential. Dalvin Cook, I think he's going to be a good running back, and there's a reason why me and Mitch believe that this guy could be Rookie of the Year because he's playing on a good team, and he's going to be starting. He's going to be having a lot of touches. I think he will be the most used running back out of the 3 that are the highly ranked picks earlier on this year. I know Dalvin Cook was a second-round choice, but still. I think there's some good things about this team that I do like, I do enjoy, and then there's Sammy Biscuits. I don't know if I can trust the guy to make some big plays in key situations where they can win these games. They're going to have to play against teams like the Packers where they might go 1-1, maybe, but I still think they can go 0-2. They did win that Week 2 game against them, and that was earlier on in the season. So that's when the Packers always kind of lose their side of things. But I don't know if they can beat them this season. I think there's a couple other teams that they're not going to be able to get to in key situations, and I think they will be the definition of the team of last year, like a team that's going to be in situations where they can win games and they'll choke. 8-8 is my record prediction. I think they will go 3rd in this division.
Yeah, I got them 2nd. I have Detroit and Minnesota flipping. So Minnesota goes from 8-8 to 9-7. Detroit goes from 9-7 to 8-8. It's gonna the start of the season is gonna do it because I could see this team going 10-6 and maybe being able to get a wild card spot with that 10-6 because I don't think 9-7 does it. But if we look at their first 3 games, Saints, Steelers, Bucks. If they go 2-1, they go 10-6 on the season because they have a somewhat easy record unless you're, without their in-division games, right? After that, their only non-division games, Ravens, Browns, Redskins, Rams, Falcons, Panthers, Bengals. Like, those are the rest. Like, those are all winnable games, I think.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm going to go 9-7, but I do think if they go 2-1 against the Saints, Steelers, and Tampa Bay, I think they can go 10-6, and we'll be able to see what they are early. The thing with Sam Bradford, The guy can't throw more than 15 yards.
Alex Smith.
He can't throw downfield. But at least we've seen Alex Smith recently been able to do that with some good talent. But I just don't think, like, you know, Adam Thielen, yeah, Stephon Diggs, yeah, but I don't think you can get enough of these guys open, especially, you know, they're going to
like both those receivers.
I do, but like, come on, they're not, you know, they're
not upper echelon, but they're good.
But the one thing I will say, if their offensive line, they with signings and waivers and stuff like that, they're not having one guy start that played together last year. Their whole starting line is all center. From isn't Berger? No. It says Joe Berger's from Dallas this year, though.
No. He's on the Vikings. He was really good last year. He's the only guy.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. But yeah, they get Reef, they get Remmers, and Alex. Did they have Alex Boone last year?
Yeah, but he was hurt.
So, you know, they could protect because Dalvin Cook's going to have to put this team on his back, I believe. Because Bradford's not going to win. I think that's going to be
hard. If they make the playoffs, Dalvin Cook's going to be amazing.
And they're going to win games by, I think, low scoring, too. You can't have Bradford. We've seen it last season. You can't have that team down early because Bradford's not going to come back.
No, I hate that.
Similar to the Chiefs. Like, Alex Smith doesn't come back, right? So it's going to be interesting, but I have them at 9-7. I think they could maybe squeak out a couple more and be 10-6, but they're going to need some magic this season to make the playoffs. They're going to be close. And the only reason I don't have them making the playoffs is because we talked about it. I think there's going to be 2 teams out of the NFC East, and I think there's going to be 2 teams out of the NFC South. So who those teams are, I'll let you know. But right now, I think it's going to be tough for the Vikings to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I got them at 9-7. I think Cook, Latavius Murray, I think the weapons are there to be okay. Their defense is going to be okay. I just look at the Vikings and I feel like they're okay. Yeah, and you have to, if you're the Vikings, you got to be a low-scoring team, win close games, and it's just right in this NFL, it's not the way that you can win anymore. You got to score more points. You got to be over 20 points, and I don't see the Vikings, if they're a 20-point team, it's barely. So I have them at 9-7 and not making the playoffs.
Yeah, again, so we could see them going to playoffs. We could see them not going to playoffs. I think for you Vikings fans out there, if Dalvin Cook has a really good season, because keep in mind, Matt Asiata was the running back last year. So if Dalvin Cook and Latavius Murray, a combination of them, can make some plays, if Stephon Diggs can stay on the field and their offensive line stays intact, this team's probably going to make the playoffs. The defense, if they cannot fall off like they did at the end of the year, they can make the playoffs. So it's a margin of 1 or 2 wins or losses that's going to be the difference for this team. Let's get to the NFC South. But before we do, let's just go over quickly our standings. I have the Packers 11-5 and being one of the top seeds in the NFC. The Vikings 9-7, flipping with the Lions, just like Adam. Lions will be 8-8, and the Bears 3-13.
I have the Green Bay Packers at 11-5. I have the Detroit Lions at 9-7, and the Minnesota Vikings at 8-8. So I'm the opposite of pretty much everybody else in that opinion. And Chicago Bears 3-13.
Yeah, I got Packers 13-3 being the first seed, maybe second seed, but I'll go first seed there. And then I have Vikings 9-7, Lions 8-8, and the Bears 2-14.
So yeah, I have the Packers 13-3, Vikings 9-7, Lions 6-10, and the Bears 3-13.